Measuring yourself is easy in some respects, like your age, your height, your weight, but not so easy in others, like your character, integrity, and maturity. But those are the real measurements we should be focusing on. Your quantitative info doesn't define who you are, it's your qualitative info that does. But growth doesn't just happen. It takes intentional accountability on your part. So welcome to the Measuring Post, a place where we can learn and grow together. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Measuring Post. My name is Joe Massa, the host of the Measuring Post, and today I've got a fantastic guest, somebody that you might not look at and think that we have any relation whatsoever, but this is technically my stepfather-in-law. He is my wife's mother's husband, Jerome Warner, who is U.S. Army retired. He's a sergeant first class and one hell of an amazing man. And I'm really excited to talk to you today, Jerome. So thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time. And how are you today, sir?
I'm doing fine. I'm retired, so what else can I say?
Yeah, definitely trying to stay busy. I'm sure I know every time I talk to you, you guys are up to something. So I'm sure retirement's not giving you nothing but free time. So hopefully keeping you busy and out of trouble.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Very cool. Well, we brought Jerome on today because I think part of this show is about learning and growing and figuring out what works in life and what doesn't. And part of that is going through history. And history is something that we should never, ever forget, because when you forget history, that's when history repeats itself. And Jerome, as a young man, you were born into the segregated South. So you had probably a childhood that's something a guy like me would never understand, which is why I really wanted to bring you on today, just to kind of talk about where you came from, your experiences growing up, your experiences going into the military, and then currently kind of where you're at now and how you certainly view things in today's world, and what do you think changes that have been made that's positive, and where do we need to keep making changes to be better in the future? So with that in mind, tell me a little bit about your early childhood.
Well, I was born in Jackson, Mississippi, March 10th, 1955. Um, I grew up, as far as I know, I guess technically we were poor, but kind of didn't know that. And I want to qualify that. Uh, our lifestyle and the things that we had as far as uh, food and all of the necessities was a bit of a challenge, but it was just life to us. That's what we. That's all we knew. So I didn't feel downtrodden. I mean, there were rules to the game. There were rules as to where you live, what you could do, and as long as you live within those boundaries, eh, nothing really happened. But I think myself and my family always had a pretty positive attitude. I think my brothers and sisters have been pretty much successful because even though faced with all of those adversities, if you call them that, uh, when that's the only thing that you know, when that is what life is, you just accept it and then you maneuver from there. So I don't remember anybody in my family just, putting their head down and said, "Woe is me." It was like, well, what's happening over here or what's happening over there? And I think we developed some pretty uh, unique survival skills. So, like today's youth, they're obsessed with iPhones and computers and things like that. We were actually obsessed with survival, and it was it was part of everyday living. I remember when we were kids, and my mom would go to work. And now here's the interesting thing: when my mom would go to work, we didn't have a car. So in the neighborhood, you would see all of these women walking down the street, like out of that movie, The Help. You see all these ladies in uniforms walking to the other side of town to service white people. And my mother was going to the other side of town to work at a dry cleaners. Well, during the day, when we probably should have went home and tried to find a meal, uh, it's hard to admit. But anyway, my friends and I would go to the supermarkets and obtain lunch, if you will. And it was never got caught. It was amazing. I mean, uh, there's so many things that we did to survive, uh, and it was just normal, and it was almost fun. So I mean, I can remember some situations where, let's say, to go to the zoo, we would have to walk to the other side of town. So we would have to walk through a white neighborhood, and dog people would turn the dogs on us, just turn the dogs loose, and we'd run through the neighborhood till we get to West Capitol Street, and then that's where the zoo was. We'd go to the zoo, and then we knew we had to come back that way, and so we got ready to run. There was another way to go on Highway 80, but if you went on Highway 80s, a lot of times guys would throw Coke bottles at you or something like that. So we went through those things, but I mean we weren't crying about it. It was just life. I mean that's what it was. Uh, so yeah, I mean there's some things that I remember that if the average person today looked at that, they would be just astonished. They would be just in disbelief that that type of thing was going on. But understand that that was life. That's the card we were dealt. That's what was happening. And so the approach we took was adapt and overcome.
Yeah, I think the greatest thing that you said there is just like, you adapt and overcome. So certainly today's youth would never understand going through something of that magnitude. And I don't think anyone would ever wish that on anyone to be segregated and treated like you were going to be attacked just through walking through a neighborhood to go see your local zoo or, go see your friends or anything. So, did you really experience any sort of moments during that time where you felt like maybe you were breaking through to like the white community? Was there any sort of growth that took place, or was that something that you really struggled with and dealt with through like the whole civil rights movement? Or was there any like moments during your upbringing where like a moment of kindness happened that maybe you didn't expect?
Well, I want to say not really. You understand? So the neighborhoods that we lived in, with the extreme segregation, uh, it was like a city within a city. In other words, we had everything we needed. We had grocery stores, we had medical clinics, we had all the things that we needed for support. Doctors, lawyers, you name it. So we never really went outside of that world, and everything seemed normal. Now, the only breakthroughs that I think I had was that they had forced busing, and so we were the busees, and so we were always bused to white neighborhoods, which were really quite nice. I did have an opportunity to meet some fellow students that we talked about things. They understood. I mean, we became friends uh, with with limitations. In other words, friends at school, but they didn't come to my house. I didn't go to their house. But we had this neutral ground at school that we could exchange ideas, and and I think we, as young people, teenagers, we kind of understood each other, uh, and that may have, in some respect, had an effect on society when those people grew up. But at the society in general, there were uh, there were strict rules of engagement. I mean, in other words, you talk about your sundown towns. I mean, people now just started hearing about that. We've always known about that. And so, for example, you can go downtown and shop, But that was the time that you needed to be at home. And so when it started getting dark, you know that you need to catch the number 6 bus and get back to where you live. So again, uh, although you know we can call it reprehensible, if you will, there were established rules of engagement: when, where, what you can do. That was understood, and that's how it was. I mean, but uh, I don't think anybody was pouting about it because, like I said, we lived in our own world. You know, you had stuff like the lady that lived next door to us worked at this what they call the Heidelberg Hotel. It's a famous hotel down there, and they got a plaque on the side of the building. Now she was a cook, so they had cooks and maids and everybody that took care of the white only guests. But if the employees wanted to take a drink of water, they had to go around to the side, and there's a water hose around there where they could drink out of the water hose, but they couldn't put their lips on any of the glasses or any of the utensils in the kitchen. And to this day, they actually have a plaque commemorating what actually took place there. And they got a water hose that's where they went to get their drink of water when they were thirsty. You know, stuff like that's some kind of interesting things that happen like that. But uh, I don't think anybody was. I don't know. We just accepted it. I guess. I mean, there was nothing else to do. I mean, the only experience I really had with pushing back against the system because I lived about 3 blocks from Jackson State, so we were on campus all the time. When I was in high school, using their library, some of the facilities that they had. So there was a riot that broke out. I want to say it might have been 68, 69, and I was part of that as a teenager. It was exciting. I probably didn't have a bead on what the political things they were talking about, but the National Guard came there and they actually uh, they killed 2 of the students in the female dorm. But that was bad. But that was right along with Kent State. The National Guard killed white students up there. So it was a tumultuous time. But I gotta admit, it was kind of as a kid it was kind of exciting. I mean, probably could have been dangerous, but at the same time, it was my friends and I. It was like giddy. I mean, it was almost fun. You know.
Yeah, I can imagine that there would be a level of excitement, not for what was going on, but just because it was such a tumultuous and extremely volatile time that just chaotic, I think would be a better word. But I like the one you picked earlier. It is reprehensible. It's something that you look back on and, the country as a whole should be ashamed of. But, this is something that's happened throughout all of history in all parts of the world where people are isolated and segregated and treated differently and poorly because of their gender, their looks, their color, or anything along those lines. And, to have it happen so close in our history, so recent in our history,
Yeah.
that I can sit and talk to you right now, my father-in-law, who firsthand experienced this. It just seems like it's like something out of a movie, but clearly it's not. And, I know that that's a really tough topic to try and maybe look back on from your vantage point. But when you got, through more of your childhood years, did you go straight into the military? And then when you were in the military, did you feel that dynamic was pretty similar, or was it a little more, were they a little more welcoming and warming because you were a serviceman in the Army?
Well, when I finished high school, I I was kind of primed to go to Jackson State. Everybody went to Jackson State. Some went to Alcorn, but I was was just fired up about going into the military because my uncle and my cousin both were in the military. Uh, they seemed to be successful. They traveled the world. They had new cars, and I just took just a look at what my future might be uh, in Jackson, Mississippi. Uh, I knew going to college was going to be a challenge. I mean, economically, we didn't have it. I I was okay as far as grades, but I wasn't a genius that was going to get a full ride or academic ride. So uh, I didn't hesitate about going to the military because I my daily activity was I went to school, I played in the band, I had a full time job every day uh, at a restaurant and a hotel. My friend and I used to swap off times to go in the storage room to do our homework, and so uh, I put in my 2 week notice at my job, and I was off for 2 weeks. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I was on my way to the army, and so I got away from Jackson. I got to see the world. I got to experience other people, and as you said before, you know how bad things were down south and here in this country. Uh, I've been to some places that I mean, even in homogenous societies, populations, I've seen some really bad stuff. So I don't think we don't have a lock on mistreating people. That goes on all over the world. I've seen it everywhere. I mean, absolutely everywhere. And I think one of the common denominators is money and power. Because one thing I do believe, uh, regardless, uh, rich people adore each other. Red, black, green, doesn't matter what color. If you belong to that class, you're okay. And I'm pretty sure they don't see color because they breathe a different air. So for us commoners, uh, we have our grievances and stuff like that. But I believe that when it comes to money and power, uh, that's a dividing line between those that have and kind of like those that don't. You know.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty safe assumption through all of history. Is it's always the guys at the top of the pyramid that are casting down, the judgment and sort of the trials and tribulations that the rest of us deal with. So, I guess from the perspective of history, I can't say it's surprising that us as a country, even though it was more recent in like the actual Earth timeline, it's because we're a newer country. But this is pretty well documented throughout all history that this happens. And again, it doesn't make it any easier to accept or to know. But I think, like I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, it's important to not forget those things
Right.
because even now we still see a lot of racial division and tension. Certainly over the last 4 or 5 years, with a lot of the things that have happened in throughout the country. But I feel like the younger generations are hopefully moving past some of that. My generation and below, my children's generation, a lot of them don't really see so much of the color. And what I really kind of like is, in my children included, a lot of children nowadays are multiracial. They're mixed children. They get a great understanding from multi-cultures. And I think that's really important because it's not so much like, this kid looks different than this kid. At some point, the melting pot's going to really be a melting pot and we're all going to be one. And we're going to have to figure out that we have to treat each other right and we can't separate someone by their looks or where they come from. And I think that's still something being worked on. And hopefully you're seeing some progress in that realm currently. But real quick, going back to your military days, because I'm interested. How long were you in the military? And just to get back to the original question, do you feel like you were kind of often segregated in the service?
Well, I was in the military for 22 years. I spent roughly half of my career overseas in Korea. As a young man, when we went there, when I went there, there was a lot of racial tension and a lot of black soldiers stuck together, white soldiers stuck together, We got it. We were into the Black Power movement, uh, stuff like that. The music went along with it. Listen to Gil Scott Heron and Last Poets, stuff like that. So yeah, that was a lot of awareness, uh, you know, that that I experienced because I went in the military at 18. So I grew up in the military. Uh, I did luckily stay out of trouble because in the military society, I always had NCO that would kind of pull me back to center when I would start, going left. But yeah, we it was a different environment, definitely different environment, uh, and that was something that I hadn't been experienced with in Mississippi. And that I was meeting guys from New York and everywhere, and so yeah, that was kind of a unity, and which I don't think it really exists anymore. Those What's going on right now is the old guard is clinging to power.
Mm-hmm.
But as you stated, uh, these young kids, and I got 8 grandkids, and these kids are just incredibly intelligent and so smart.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, when I was growing up, you give me a rock and a stick and some dirt, and having a ball. I had one of my grandkids made a fool out of me on my computer a couple of years ago. It's like, you're 7. It's like, well, you're wrong, Grandpa. So okay. But anyway, these kids are just amazing, and yes, they see through the facade that we put out there. I mean, our leaders, and actually, uh, the thing that concerns me is that there seems to be a resurgence of racism and potential violence. I am deadly afraid of what might happen on November the 5th. I mean, I'm not kidding. Uh, I don't know if it goes a certain way, we're in trouble. I mean, there's no way to. And I'm going to be frank, and I'm going to tell you how I feel about that.
Sure.
If it goes a certain way, people are going to be up in arms, and they're going to want retribution against whoever won. Well, so then you ask the question: well, who's going to be the enemy and who's not going to be the enemy? I don't know of any people that I know walk around with a D tattoo to their head. So if you excuse that, then we start going down the line, dark to light. Well, that puts me at the front of the line. So I'm serious. I I I don't know how. Yes, I do. I know how we ended up this way because uh, there's a person that has mastered uh, mind control, and it's quite a substantial number of people that will risk everything out of loyalty to this person to this person, and it makes you think about a repeat of history. Go back to 1933. There's another gentleman that was able to uh, mesmerize population, and it's sad because I mean, we could point out all of the ills of this country, all of the things that were done wrong, but this is a great country, and I mean I've been to a lot of places, and that's why everybody's trying to get here, and a lot of us have made sacrifices to have things the way that they are. I mean, and they're not perfect, but to regress into something like that is just a damn shame. It's I feel so bad about that. I mean, I think about the fact that I gave the best years of my life to the to this country. I mean, my youth. I'm older now, so I'm developing some medical issues here and there, but in my productive youth, I dedicated that to this country, and now we got these people that that doesn't matter. You know, the only hope we got, I think, is the young kids. Uh, I in my business, I work with young people, and I talk to them, and they they are intelligent. Uh, and as far as the racial things, that's not such an issue with them. But it's just old people that's keeping this crap going, and we just need to die off and let these people take over because all of the vitriol and hatred is coming from people in my age group that's trying to clean the power. That's what's going on.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with that. And first, I would be remiss without saying thank you for your service for 22 years. And I think, it didn't just end there for you because what you did after that, you had a whole secondary career where you also worked in the U.S. Post Office and worked your way up those ranks. But we'll get to that in a minute. But I think it is the older generations, unfortunately, that are still perpetuating this hate down the chain. And it's these old politicians that have been there for 30, 40, 50 years that are just making themselves rich, stuffing their pockets full of our money and then making us so divided. I think even in, you've seen a lot of political division, I'm sure over your years, way more than I've ever seen, but this current dichotomy of right and left is crazy. It is, there's like such hostility, and it doesn't matter if you're for the right or for the left. They are like just so aggressively angry at each other, and I don't know if it's meant to be a devising factor where we're divide and conquer sort of thing, but it seems like it is the older generations that are still just fueling this. And I agree. I'm really looking forward to, even though this election isn't over, I can't wait till the next one already, just to be done with it. And we can have two new faces in there, hopefully, that are just, that people don't want to, kill each other over. It's frustrating because you're seeing families and friends and relationships separate because of this political division. And I think it is, you use the right word, we're regressing because of it. And we're not moving forward and being, proactive in the rebirth and the regrowth of this country. So I'm really excited for this to be over. I think it's terrible that, a man that served his country so well as you did, not only in your military career, but afterwards with the federal post office, that there's a level of fear, just from a political standpoint. And you're certainly not the only one. I've talked to many other people that feel very similar, and it's a topic that's really sore and tough to like get out there. And I think, again, that's why I like this venue, that people can just share their feelings. And, I appreciate your understanding that, you experienced a lot of that and saw a lot of it, but unfortunately it is, coming downhill. I like the younger generation coming up because I think a lot of this will change. But in the short term, I mean, it's like, gearing up for another hurricane down in Florida, which is going on like right now. It's like, close your windows and lock your doors, and let's try to remember that we're all Americans here, and we're still should be looking out for each other instead of getting angry at each other.
Yeah, I've never felt like this. As elections go, you know, people win, people lose. Uh, People have lost graciously, even though there was kind of a question about things here or there. But this is frightening. This is the most fear I've experienced, and I feel fear for my family, for my friends. It's very uncomfortable. I'm going to vote, of course, but I tell you what, this what is going on now, this time in particular, is just is distressing. It really is.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of segues into another topic that I think is important outside of politics.
which of course is all consuming right now that we're a month or so away from an election. So obviously that's you can't escape that. But just outside of politics, what do you think of, changes you've seen in the last 10 years or less? Is there anything good that's been going on? Is this seeing any sort of improvement with, not only racial tension but, disparity between communities? Like, where do we need to get better at still to be better as a whole nation?
Well, from a business standpoint, to see how things go on, uh, the level of greed is just unreal. I mean, I feel sorry for the young generation. I don't know if they'll ever be able to afford a home to buy a house. Uh, I mean, jobs are relatively plentiful, but they don't pay a living wage. I mean, I don't think a single man can survive on $1,500 a month unless he's living in his mother's basement. I mean, the society as a whole. Uh, I mean, I just feel so bad about the young generation. Their economic outlook is not good. There are some people that might be successful. Going to college might make it a little bit, but for the most part, they got a they got a hard way to go, and it's only because I want to say we've made it that way, or those that have the power have made it that way for them. Uh, I would love to be young again, but I don't know if I want to be a young man in this society because it's tough. I mean, uh, I made it by just when I retired, I had worked 50 years. So, you know, along the way, I've accumulated things, I had homes, business, stuff like that. Uh, that's hard now. That's really hard now. Uh, I mean, and on the political or side or the way we get along with each other in this country, uh, it is. I thought we were making progress at one point, but somebody put the brakes on that, and it's just it's going to be downright dangerous. And then some of the behaviors that I see in society is kind of shocking. I mean, uh, there seems to be no limit on what people will do or what is being done. Now at the same time, I'm praising the youth. Some of them are just absolutely crazy. I mean, with the driving donuts in the street and the violence. Now I got to tell you this. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi, and I guarantee you that is one of the most dangerous cities in this country. I mean, you got 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds walking around with long guns. I don't mean just 9 millimeters, and they're killing each other at a rapid pace. They don't know how to resolve conflict. It's like when I was a kid, we had a problem. We would go behind what we call the 10 building, and we would duke it out. And next day, be like, okay, you took an L. All right, we cool. Now, these kids' approach to conflict resolution is what they've been seeing in the video games, and they have access to guns, and they just shoot. And I mean, and it's happening everywhere. I mean, it's and then you got some places like some places down south. You don't need a license. You don't need nothing. You don't need open carry, and people are just blowing each other away. Young people are killing each
Yeah.
other at a rapid pace, and that's just dangerous. I don't know what we're going to do about that.
Yeah, and I think that leads into another topic that is something that is often swept under the rug, but very, very valuable to talk about. And that's like the mental health of this country. And I don't know if it's lack of education, lack of resources, but a lot of these younger kids you see just struggling with mental health. I've had some of that in my own family, friends that have gone through it, that are currently going through it. And it just seems like there's nothing out there to help them. There's no resources, there's no funding, there's no people out there, putting boots on the ground, helping these kids and young adults out there that are lost. And a lot of times those are the ones out there that do the violent and unpredictable things because they're unbalanced in their brain. And there's not enough education and resources here in this country.
And uh, what you said is very true. And the thing is, uh, I would just say, for example, in the state of Mississippi, they're sitting on over $1 billion in state revenue, just sitting there that they won't invest in things. And it's probably true here. Is that they won't invest in that. There's money that I'm gonna tell you why. Because if it doesn't generate money, they're not gonna invest in it. I mean, we mental health is so bad. I mean, it's bad. And so recently, they tried to have these contact teams that go out with police when they try to deal with people that's having stressful
Mm-hmm.
mental issues. That's a step in the right direction, but it's just really poorly financed or supported. And I mean, we got people with a lot of mental issues, and nothing acceptable is being done about it. And I tell you what, it's going to come back to hurt us because what they're going to do is people are going to start dying by police. People are going to just go off, and the police training is, well, if he's with that 45 caliber iPhone in his hand, let's shoot him. This it's crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's very well documented in this country, especially. And you look at some like police agencies and forces in different countries, even in Western Europe and Canada, and those guys and gals that go through their training programs there to be a police officer, they go. It's almost like a whole college. It's like 2 to 4 year training. It's not like a boot camp where you're in and out in 6 weeks and they give you your gun and badge and turn you loose. I mean, there needs to be true training and understanding and compassion and empathy when you're dealing with that community that's marginalized and or has mental illness and they're out there. Yeah, they might be unpredictable and they might be coming across confrontational, but it's like a dog that that runs up on you, is barking really aggressive. You don't just shoot it right away. I mean, that's kind of the mentality that I think a lot of our police officers have, and certainly not all. So I don't want to group them into a category and say all police are bad, because that's not my intention.
Well,
But it's like a shoot now and ask questions later mentality sometimes.
the training to be a hairdresser is 3 times as long as the training to be a police officer. And the other thing I've noticed over the years, something really funny. I think about this. I saw this picture not too long ago. The police in Thornton used to wear suits, business suits, and that's how they engaged with the populace. These guys now dress like I used to dress in the military. They got dark BDUs on. They driving Raptors. I mean, these assault vehicles, uh, and the rules of engagement are almost similar to what we had in the military. I mean, I if I if something happens to me, I'm not calling the cops to my house because I don't know what kind of reaction I'm going to get when they come to my front door. Honestly, if you call the cops, by the time they get there, whatever happened is a matter of history. It has already happened. So then you need to fear for what's going to happen to you when that guy comes to you and he's jacked up and he's on edge. I'll tell you, I had an opportunity to be around some police officers and some of what I do, and when they leave the station, they are jacked up. They are ready for a fight. I mean, maybe some of the older guys are probably a little bit more settled, but they turn loose some really hostile people on us, and some of them are fearful, and some of them are aggressive and angry. Uh, I don't know, man. It's a bad situation.
Yeah, and I think it starts right now with more education. I think not only just the police force, but this country in general needs to have better lines of communication. We need to have better forms of education, more resources to be allocated. But I think you said it right. It's one of those things that if it doesn't make dollars, then it doesn't make sense. Somebody that works in the medical field that I know real well and I trust. One of his running mottos is hospitals aren't in the business of making people better, because if they're better, they don't come back and fill up a bed and put money. And obviously doctors and nurses go to school to want to help people. And but as the establishment, a hospital is a business. Businesses aren't in the business of getting their customers a lifelong product that serves them and then they're gone forever. They like repeat business, revolving door syndrome. So, I think it's a way we need to, as a country and as a planet in general, we have got to be better at using our resources to really make differences in communities, not only marginalized communities, but all communities. And I think it's important that we start with our youth. I know you are kind of on your generation is the older generation right now, and you're kind of all on your way out. I hate to say it that way, but my generation's not far behind yours, but then the kids below us and my kids, and my son's a senior in high school, and I love his group of friends and the way that they interact with the world, and they're being educated in a more informative, thorough way than I think even I was. And I like to see that, because we have to set those young generations up to be better than us. And I think that starts with better education first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree totally. I mean, that is this country's only hope. I'm telling you, man, because the greedy people from my generation don't want to turn it loose, and they've monetized damn near everything, as you said, health, uh, support for the populace. Everything has been monetized, and I don't. I think the younger people, uh, and I don't know, it hasn't been any help for my generation, but the youth always have a degree of innocence. As I said before, when I was a teenager, uh, I made friends with some white students that never should have happened. We never should have been in proximity to each other, but thankfully that happened. So we did have some effect. So I think it's a cumulative thing that some of the good is extracted out of society and passed down to the youth. Uh, we just we need to have the political courage and will to get rid of some of these old people. There need to be term limits. There need to be age limits. These two cats that was running for office, pushing them to run for president again, I equate that to like elderly abuse. I mean, these guys can barely walk and talk, and they're crapping on themselves. They can barely hear or see, and we pushing them to represent this country. That's a damn shame.
And
It,
honestly, it's an embarrassment. I mean,
it is.
regardless whether you like that person's policies or not, nobody needs an 80-something-year-old man or woman running a country that's got 400 million. We're supposed to be the biggest, brightest, best country in the world, and we got two way over the hill AARP members at the helm, and that's absolutely bonkers to even think that was like these are the best two people you could pull out of this entire population. That's absolutely insane to me. And then I think term limits is the best thing you said, because a lot of the time presidents get like the heat, they get the bulk of the heat, but you have these senators that have been there for 40 years and they went into office poor and they're all multimillionaires now making a government salary. How is that happening? And to have 50 or 60 or 40 years in office, I mean, when the founding fathers set up the Constitution, when you took a position in politics, you were a civil public servant. You did your 4-year term, your 8-year term, and then you were out. And then you went back to your regular career. And I think that's the revolving door we really need to fix. Not hospitals, not businesses, politics. Because I think a lot of what happened in this country in the past, a lot of what's happening now, and certainly our future is in the balance if we don't fix our political system, get rid of this whole division that's currently going on with the two candidates now, but outside of this, term limits need to happen. Bring in some young, fresh blood and new ideas and thinking to push this country into the right direction.
Exactly, and you know, it doesn't take much to be a politician. I think we got somebody that's represents area in Colorado that I think it took her 7 times to pass the GED. I mean, come on now. If you're going to run this country, let's get, like you said, get the best and brightest up there. And I know how the system is set up to where any man or woman can step up to the plate and help serve the country. But when you're talking about being in charge of issues that control the rest of the population, let's get the best. Let's just get the best, you know?
Yeah, you need to be qualified. I think that no matter what side of the fence you're on politically, I think we can all agree on that. We need to bring in some brighter, younger, fresher minds that are really qualified and educated and have that pedigree, that right internal compass that's going to lead them and help us come out of some of the dark times that we found ourselves in. So, yeah, I think that's really a good way to kind of feel about this whole conversation, obviously, because going back to just wanting to get your history, because again, history is important to remember. A lot of that starts with who was in office at the time, and those are the rules that were set out for the land, and the people of the land just followed the law. Doesn't mean the law is right. It just it's not morally correct always. It was just legally right because that was the way everybody did things. So to not fall into that trap again and to not continue just doing things that are morally reprehensible, we got to change our laws, our legal system, our politics. And I think that's something that as a country, we really need to focus on, for the next 10, 15, 20 years to save us from a lot of struggle that's going to come.
And if they think that they can't lose this republic, they need to look back at the Roman Empire. They were at once considered invincible, and they imploded on themselves. And we're doing that. I mean, we're kind of headed in that direction, and somebody needs to pump the brakes and just stop and take a look at what's going on.
Yeah, and I think for the younger generations that we're talking about, and if you are listening to this and you're my age or below, and you really want to make a difference and change in this world, consider public office. Consider serving your country, whether that's in the military, in a federal agency, or run for your local city council or anything. You can make big changes in a ripple effect in the community by serving on a local level. Things can escalate and good ideas can be spread. So, maybe that's the lesson we take from this. Obviously, it's be better, be kinder, be more reasonable. Education is important. Let's upgrade our political system. And if you want to see that change, be a part of it. Put your name in the hat, put your name on the voting ballot, and be a part of the political change that needs to happen to restructure some of the things that have happened in this country.
And I've traveled a lot, and I've seen some situation that we wouldn't like. And the thing is, it's not going to do any good to disengage. I mean, you're here. This is where you're going to live and die. So why not make it better? So contribute, as you said, and let's make what we have better. Because aside from a few things, it's pretty darn good. And that's why these kids they need to get engaged. We need them.
Yeah, and part of making the country better is by sharing stories like yours and your experiences because, a 40-year-old white guy from Colorado, I've never seen or dealt with those things. Obviously, I've seen them, I've read it, but I've never experienced it firsthand. So I want to thank you, Papa Jerome, as our grandkids call you, for taking time and sharing your story. It's important and it's valuable and it means something and it needs to be recorded and shared so as a whole, we can be better. So, I really thank you for giving us your time today. And, is there anything that you want to close with or anything on your mind that you want to wrap up with?
Yeah. I can't overemphasize my gut feeling about what's going to happen here in the next month or so. I I'm just waiting to see. I've never felt this uneasy about things, and at my age, my parting shot would be to say that we need the youth. We need the youth. We need someone. I don't know who. Uh, if we can take a hold of this political apparatus that we have and see if we can kind of tweak it, because it's not as effective as it should be. It really isn't. And I just I just pray for the youth. I hope they do something. My day is, I'm not a pessimist, but my day is over. I mean, I do things in my life, but I'm not gonna make a major uh, contribution to this nation. But there's young kids out there. I got some grandkids that are outstanding, yours included. I mean, these. I'm so impressed with these young people, their level of intelligence, and I don't mean just book smarts. These kids are just amazing. The way they comport themselves. These are the people that we need to lead this country, and that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, I love it. And great words of wisdom from somebody that's seen a lot, done a lot, and helped out a lot. Maybe you can't make a huge contribution moving forward in the nation, but you already have made a big contribution. And you dedicated, 50 years of your life to federal service in the military and post office. So your words are well received and highly regarded and respected. And I think the best thing we can do, you're right, it's treat the youth right. But, regardless of what you think is going to happen politically next month, remember that we're still Americans and we're neighbors and we need to treat each other with respect and humility, and also look
Right.
out for each other. If we don't look out for each other, I like one part you said earlier, like, if someone breaks into my house and I'm calling the cops waiting for that to happen, it might be too late. Whatever happens already happened. We can't wait for the government to fix all of our problems. We're a community and a society, and look out for your neighbor and take care of each other and your family and everyone that goes in between that. And I think that's the most important thing. And
Mm-hmm.
with that, I appreciate your time on the measuring post, sir. And I look forward to hopefully bringing you back maybe in 6 months to a year from now. And hopefully we'll see something good has happened even after the political turmoil. And, as a country, let's just keep pushing to be better. Remember where we came from, but also look to what we can do to get to where we need to go.
I think that's a good idea. Yep.
Thank you, Jerome. Appreciate your time on the measuring post, sir. And we'll catch up soon.